So much of early stage entrepreneurship is not about tactics. Guess what it's about? It is about tolerance, your tolerance for risk, for ambiguity, for rejection, for delayed gratification. You got to have a really high tolerance for these things. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. So it's about how you're showing up when everything feels foggy, no one's giving you a clear answer or a green light. And it can be challenging and it can be like a total mental game at times, right? So risk, uncertainty, tolerance, that's what we're talking about today. We're going to go through 3 big questions that you should ask yourself that will help you kind of reframe your relationship to risk and uncertainty and give you some tools to keep moving, even when the path ahead is unclear, which I guarantee to some extent, if you're listening to this, it is probably quite unclear at the moment. And everybody's going through it. You're not alone, but we're going to talk through what that looks like, what those things are, and how you can reframe them. Okay, this is a fun topic. And the reason I say it's fun is because I kind of find it fascinating. I've had a few friends lately say to me, oh, that's risky, or there's risk. And my husband, James, and I, we're very much on the same page with what our appetite for risk is and what we consider risky. And I have more and more of a realization of how different people's relationship with risk is and how much that really kind of frames your life and what you do. Like what your appetite is for risk really determines what you do in your life. Now, there are things that are like physically risky. So for me, I will fly down the mountain on a snowboard, but I have zero desire to jump out of an airplane. I'm like, yep, no, just not worth it. I don't, I'd like to say I'd overcome my fear of heights, which I don't know is now a thing as I've gotten older, I guess, but I just don't feel like risking my life to jump out of an airplane. So, but I'll do other things that I don't know, people might consider risky. And then there's plenty of people who are like, I'll jump out of an airplane. It's so fun. So everybody has a different level of risk and across different aspects of their life. And I think if you can really understand what your comfort level and where your, comfort level with risk and your tolerance with risk lies, it can help you understand like what paths to pursue. And some people just don't want to take certain risks. And to some people, certain things are risky. And to other people, those things aren't risky at all. So for me, like starting a business, real estate, all these things, they're not risky to me. To me, it's riskier, much riskier to not do those things. So I see what is risky to me is having a job, having one stream of income. To me, that would feel super risky. It's like, because if that one goes away, what do you do, right? Yeah, you have savings and stuff, but you're kind of scrambling a little bit. So while some people might see what I do as risky, we've got multiple streams of income, we've got multiple businesses. To us, that feels like smart and not risky at all. So again, I think it's important to understand how you view risk and how that relates to your life and the decisions you make. So I think the first question to ask yourself is, do you see risk as a threat or as an opportunity? So there's a lot of things out there in business that you can see a risk and you can feel it as threatening, or you can go, oh, hey, there's an opportunity there. And there's calculated risk and there's stupid risk, right? Gambling, probably not the smartest thing to do. But when most people hear risk, they think danger. It's like me jumping out of the airplane, right? I think, okay, no, I don't want to die. I'm not going to do that. Loss, threat. But entrepreneurs, and a lot of people think like risk, quitting your job, starting a business. Oh my God, that's so risky. And But founders, entrepreneurs don't feel that way, right? We've trained ourselves to see risk differently. And risk is ultimately like why you get into the game of this. It's the toll you pay to build something new. It's the age old, no risk, no reward. I don't think that's 100% true, but, I do think there is some element of that. Like if you want to go out and have 5 to 10 streams of income, like, yeah, you're probably going to be making what some people might consider risky decisions along the way. But instead of asking yourself, so let's say you're looking at something that is considered risky, instead of asking yourself what could go wrong, try asking, what's the upside I'm missing if I don't take this leap? So if you're sitting there right now thinking about raising money and all you're doing is you're going, oh, what if I get screwed over? What if they take my company? What if they, what if I lose their money? And you're thinking about all the things that can go wrong. Well, I think it is good to think through all that stuff because it's just being smart and knowing what the, potential outcomes are so you can help mitigate those risks. But you also want to frame it as, what is the upside I'm missing if I don't go get investors' money? So are you going to be able to grow? Are you going to be able to sell your company at some day if that's your goal? Are you going to be able to hire better people? Are you going to be able to take a vacation? So, what's the upside that's missing if you don't raise that money? So if you're teetering on the fence and you're not sure if you should raise money or not, try to stop for a minute. Don't look at just the things that are going to go wrong, but look at what are all the things that could go right and could be even better if you do go out and raise the money. So I think it's really important to do that because if you also start tracking what happens when you don't act, that's a risk too. So if you're sitting there and you're procrastinating on reaching out to investors, you are risking time, you're risking momentum, and you're risking staying stuck. So while you might be a little bit worried or, stressed or anticipating possibly the worst, and you're delaying going out and pitching investors or finishing your pitch deck or whatever it is, there is risk also to not doing that. So try to just really sit with that and get comfortable with where are you at and challenge yourself a bit. Like, am I worried about the risk of going out and being rejected or getting a bad deal? Or am I also going to worry about the risk of, losing time, losing momentum, and staying stuck where I am right now? So make sure you're looking at both sides of that coin because you can't avoid risk. I think that's the important point here. There's risk on both sides. You can only choose what kind you want. And again, that's where everybody has a different tolerance and a different view of risk. But it's really important to sit down and look at what the two sides are and then choose which kind you're okay with. And then just embrace it and go with it. If you're like, yeah, no, I do not want to get rejected, I'm not okay with that risk, then don't. But you got to figure out what you're going to do if you're not going to raise money and pitch investors. How are you going to get profitable? How are you going to sustain your company without outside funding? So just focus on that. But if you are okay, if you're not okay with the risk of losing time, momentum, and those things, then you need to get out there and start pitching and making it happen. Because you're either risking trying and learning or you're risking waiting and wondering. But again, two sides of that. Okay, the second big question you could say is, what does financial uncertainty trigger in you and how do you manage that? This is a big one. Uncertainty, I think you're either just kind of okay with it or you're not. I'm very okay with uncertainty. And again, I look at uncertainty as an opportunity. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. And I love that because I don't know, I might meet somebody next year who has some great opportunity and I decide to pursue that, or who the heck knows, right? So some people just want to know what they're going to be doing in 6 months, a year, 5 years. They're not comfortable with uncertainty. And some people, a lot of entrepreneurs, I think specifically, are totally comfortable with uncertainty. But it's important to get really familiar with where your comfort level lies around financial uncertainty, because there's a lot of it in entrepreneurship. So this one is a tough one because financial uncertainty is different than just regular business. Like, I don't know, I might have a different job or I might have a different company, whatever. But when you're really not sure, like where you're going to be financially, people can get stuck there. Now, what I think one of the most powerful things that has happened to me in my career is having to start all over from scratch and rebuild and coming back bigger and faster than I did before. And it's so powerful because it eliminates all this worry about financial uncertainty. If I lost everything tomorrow, I'm not even honestly worried about it because I know we could figure it out. And again, my husband James, we're both very similar, where if you dropped us in a country and we had nothing, we know we could figure something out and make it work. And there's a lot of power to that because it doesn't, like, the finances don't grip you and hold you. Like, of course, we love making money and we try to diversify and again, have multiple streams of income so that we don't have to worry about financial, uncertainty. But ultimately, I'm okay with it. Like if, something happens, it happens. And again, we try not to do it, but I've been there before, put 10 years into a company that didn't work out the way I wanted it to and had to start over from scratch. And it was an incredible lesson to learn because it removed all this fear. And maybe that was a lesson I needed to learn because maybe I did have a fear of financial uncertainty and I needed that to teach me that, ultimately I'm able to kind of come back from whatever. So whether you're bootstrapping or trying to raise capital, you're almost always financially tight. And it is not just like on a spreadsheet, it is very emotional, right? It can create like anxiety and fear and shame and imposter syndrome and scarcity behaviors like micromanaging and, avoiding doing big things. I've been there, I've done all those things. And so how do you manage it? And I think here's a few ways you can do it. Separate facts from fear. So write out what is actually happening versus what your brain is kind of attached to or, emotionally attached to. Run worst case scenarios just to look at them. Again, if whatever, I don't know, the world fell apart and I lost everything tomorrow, like what would we do? We would figure it out. And then it's like, okay, that's the worst case scenario. Everything else is great. It's not to scare yourself, but it's to see that you'd survive them and likely bounce back. And I am telling you from personal experience, bounce back even stronger. So, just take a hard look at that and separate the facts from the fear. Look at the worst case scenario, and it can really help remove that financial fear of financial uncertainty. The other thing is just zoom out. If you're building something with long-term value, remind yourself like short-term instability is part of long-term growth. There's going to be an ebb and flow. It's normal. Everybody goes through it. But it's really helpful if you can reframe that. I think that sometimes a little bit of financial discomfort is proof that you are investing in yourself and your future. So if you are right now a little bit financially uncomfortable and you're going out to pitch investors, it's because you are committed to your future and something bigger and better. So just own that and feel good about that. Okay, the third thing. So third big question. I love this question because it's so powerful. And I remind myself of this, or try to, as often as possible. If you knew success was inevitable, how would you show up to these investor meetings? How would you show up to your day-to-day, right? So if you just knew that, if you saw the future, you had the crystal ball and you're like, oh, wow, look, whatever your definition of success is, I reached it. Think about how different you would approach every day. I mean, so much lighter, I mean, you could just feel like a lot of that worry and stress melt away, right? Whether it's worry and stress of like, whether it's ego or finances or whatever, you can feel that literally just kind of like fall away. So much founder stress comes from not knowing if the effort will pay off. Oh man, I've done this so many times. You like put so much effort into something and that little voice in the back of your head, am I wasting time? I have definitely been in this situation many times. And it's funny, my son, he's 8, almost 9, and he hates taking a shower. And I'm always like, seriously, you've been like playing soccer, you've been whatever. And just the other day, I was like, you got to take a shower, you got to take a shower. He's like, I hate taking showers. It's a waste of time. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, wow, okay. This kid is definitely, the apple does not fall far from the tree, does not like to waste time. Think of all the other things you could be doing with that 5 minutes that he took a shower. You could be ant hunting, playing soccer, who knows what. But it inevitably, this creeps in of like wasting time. And I know we all have that fear because you're taking a risk. And that risk can sometimes be time. Time is unfortunately finite, right? It's not something we get back, and it's something that could end tomorrow. We have no idea. So again, reframing that, like, now to me, I'd be wasting time if I was sitting at a desk working for somebody else for the rest of my life. That feels like wasting time to me. To other people, wasting time might be, I'm going to put all this effort for a year into the startup and it's not going to go anywhere and I've wasted that whole year. So reframing that, I guarantee you, if you are going through this fundraising process, no matter the end result, you are not wasting time. You are going to learn so much. And again, where there's a will, there's a way. It might zig and zag there, but you will get there if you're determined to. So if I knew this was going to work out eventually, how would you show up again? So pause, ask yourself that. Would you be calmer? Would you be more confident? Would you finally send that pitch, apply to the accelerator you want to go to, raise your prices, launch your product, whatever it is? When you borrow that belief of that future vision of kind of where you're at, you are going to lead right now your day-to-day with a lot more courage. And that is going to come through when you're meeting investors, when you're meeting with customers, and even just, I think, when you're around like your friends and family. That can, because again, these heavy feelings of fear and anxiety over risk and uncertainty, they can sometimes it's hard to compartmentalize that completely. And it can shut you down a tiny bit when you're with your friends and your family. So if you knew the outcome that you want was inevitable, imagine how much lighter you would be around your friends and your family, and you wouldn't let that stress get you down. So I think, the founders who succeed are the ones who they know it will work out and they lead with that and they act as if it would. I wholeheartedly believe that. And I've been in situations where deep down, I didn't know if it would work out and I didn't believe that. And I think that played into some of the way that, the way that resulted. So, okay, here's your founder prompt for this week. Sit with it, journal it, whatever you want to do. But what is your default reaction to risk? What do you see as risky? Is it the risk of time? Wasting time? Is it the risk of, rejection? Like, what do you see as risky right now for where you're at? What is financial uncertainty like really bringing up to you? And how can you ground yourself and like ask yourself those hard questions and run that worst case scenario? And then know that you'll be okay. You will figure it out. If you've come this far, you're listening to this, you're the type of person who will figure it out. And what would you do today if you already knew that what you're doing was going to work? If you're going to close that funding, you're going to sell your company, you're going to grow it to whatever, what would you do today? How would you feel? How would you act? So that shift in mindset, you guys, that is your edge. That is how you keep showing up. even when no one's clapping and cheering you on, like that is what is going to do it. So that is it for today. If this hits home for you, if you know somebody who could, stand a little pick me up, or who has, been going through some tough entrepreneurial times, share this with them. I'd love to hear what you're going through, what your struggles are, what your wins are. Email me or DM me on LinkedIn, and I hope this helps. We'll see you guys next time.